So what I want to talk about a little bit here is the Fiduciary Audit File that we included in your package. What we're hoping this will do is just make your job as a plan administrator a little bit easier, even if you never become a client of ours. One of the biggest things we find with most small business plans is they're not really documenting properly their 401k process. And that's one of the biggest things that the Department of Labor or IRS is going to come after you for if they do an audit. They want to see that you're following a process and documenting it. If you're doing that, in most cases, any lawsuits or any kind of Department of Labor audits aren't going to be able to affect you at all. So what this does is it lays out exactly everything you should have on record, readily accessible, so that you can show an auditor or a lawyer, if you're ever sued, exactly what you're doing. It's very clear cut, and it shouldn't take you a whole lot of time. We'll talk a little bit more in this video about exactly what you should have and how you should lay that out.
The first section of the Fiduciary Audit File should contain the information on the fiduciaries themselves. So what you're going to want to have is an executed copy of your Plan Oversight Committee charter that lists all your fiduciaries. You also want to have documentation that each fiduciary acknowledges written that they are a fiduciary, and you want to also document any kind of annual fiduciary training you're undertaking. So you can see if you're not doing this currently, you're obviously not meeting the Department of Labor requirements. So it's a very important part of the process. The next thing that you want to have in the Fiduciary Audit File is your fees and expenses. Here you're going to have invoices from all of the third parties that are helping you with the 401k plan. So this could be your registered investment advisor, could be your broker, it could be your third-party administrator, record keeper, anybody involved in the plan. And you want to have it spelled out to the dollar amount what they're being paid. The second part of this section should focus on your fee audits. Again, Department of Labor is going to require that you are reviewing your plan every so often to ensure that it's in line with your competitors or a plan your size. So if you don't have any of these, you're obviously not being compliant. Finally, the last thing you're going to have there is information on the mutual funds themselves, the share class information. This will give you an idea of what you're spending for the investments, the underlying investments for the participants. And here again, we want to be focused on keeping fees as low as possible. The next section of your Fiduciary Audit File should be looking at plan performance reviews. So you've already heard me mention how you should be benchmarking your plan relative to your competitors or other plans your size. And the Department of Labor is going to look to make sure you're doing this. We recommend you do it at least annually, but if annually seems to be a bit too much, I think you could do it every 2 years. I wouldn't go beyond that because the landscape is changing drastically as far as what's being offered in plans. So you don't want to do that. But when you're doing your benchmarking studies, you want to make sure that you're focused on plan design, employee issues, fiduciary, asset allocation, and then of course the total plan costs. After that, you want to have all of your service provider documents in a section. This is going to be all your contracts or agreements with your registered investment advisor or broker, your custodian, the record keeper, third-party administrator, and if you've hired any auditors or attorneys, you'll have that here as well. But you want to also include in this section any kind of due diligence you did and showing how you selected the provider that you did. For your RIAs, you want to have their annual Form ADV. That's the regulatory document they have on file with the states or SEC. And finally, you want to have all copies of Fidelity bond coverage so that you know that you are in compliance with the amount of Fidelity bond coverage you should have as well as your advisor. Then we're on to the actual mutual fund information. So you want to have a section where you have all of the mutual fund prospectuses as well as the fund fact sheets so that all of the investments that you currently have, you have information on them. And you want to make sure it's the most up-to-date information. Now, the mutual fund prospectuses can be several pages. We're talking hundreds of pages for each. So usually what I'll try to do here is I don't necessarily put this into a paper file. What I'll do is I'll just have a sheet there showing the location on my computer or on my server that contains all of this information so that it can be easily grasped if needed. The next section focuses on your investment policy statement. This is an extremely important part of the whole fiduciary process. The IPS, as it's known, is really a core part and something that they're really going to look at if you have an audit from the Department of Labor, IRS, or if you're ever sued. This is where you're continually reviewing the funds that are being offered to the plan participants to make sure that not only they're performing as you expect them to, but that the fee structure is such that it's beneficial to the participants. So here you obviously want to have a current version of your investment policy statement, but you also want to have any historical copies of that, as well as any reports that help you analyze what's going on with the funds that you have relative to your investment policy statement. So again, the big thing here is to make sure that you have a solid process in place. If you don't, you really need to review your 401k process. Of course, what is a good fiduciary process if you're not actually documenting it? So the next section focuses on the meeting minutes. And all you're going to do in these minutes is to make sure that you're documenting everything that you're doing on the plan as far as what decisions you're making. And you also process the reasoning behind those decisions. So spell everything out so that an auditor can track exactly what the committee has been doing and why they've done it. And since the 401k plan is built for the participants or the employees, you want to make sure that the employees are getting proper education and that you have copies of all the various handouts, presentation, risk tolerance questionnaires, anything you're doing to educate the participants. The other thing you want to make sure you're tracking is all of the enrollment forms, so you can see who their beneficiaries are, how much they're having withheld from pay. All of those items should be readily available to you. And the final section is the underlying plan documents themselves. So these are all the documents that describe how your 401k or retirement plan functions. So you have a plan document, an adoption agreement, your summary plan description. It also includes a 404C notice or the safe harbor notice if applicable. And of course, you're going to have your 5500, which is essentially your tax return for your 401k or retirement plan. Not only the current one, but the past ones as well. So what you can instantly see from this fiduciary audit file is it does take a little bit of work to make sure that you're in compliance with all the regulations and laws. If you're not actively doing this, then you need to do it. This isn't something you can just put on the back burner. It isn't a lot of hard work, it isn't a lot of analysis, but it does require a very strong process and a strong dedication to making sure that it gets done. So this is something that we take care of for all of our clients where we're managing the 401k plan. But if you do have any questions on how this should function, or if you would like a little bit of advice in getting it started and implemented, we'd be happy to answer those questions for you.